be a light for you in dark places when all other lights go out.
Hey guys, DCHL Devin here, and welcome to another episode of A Light in the Dark. And today I wanted to quickly cover a one-off topic, is the idea of how is it that you actually roll multiple dice in Lord of the Rings. This is a game where everything is done one at a time, and it always is done one at a time. When you move a model, and you must resolve its complete movement before you can move another model. When you shoot, you must shoot one model, see if it hits, see if it wounds, and then progress to the next model. And then when you fight, same thing. But yet, a lot of beginners see expert players just sort of rolling tons of dice all at once. So wait, why are you doing this? And this is basically to speed up the game. But the big question is, how do you do it? We had a Facebook chat on our channel where a player asked, how exactly do you take multiple shots together? Now, he's coming to our Nova Open tournament. He wants to know exactly how this is done, so that way when he sees it in a tournament setting, he understands how it works. He doesn't maybe cheat his opponent accidentally or something like that. Now, the way it works is actually just based on a pure logic and common sense of the rules. This is actually really tough for a new player, though, because they won't have that logic or common sense since they're just still learning how to play. So when we talk about it, this is really all Games Workshop has to say on it. It gives a tiny, tiny little clause about taking shots together, all right? Now I'm going to start with the shoot phase because that's probably the most complicated of the three. So when we look at the shoot phase, Games Workshop on page 36 of your rulebook has a clause that says, sometimes you will have several models firing at the same target. These situations can be made quicker by taking all the shots together. To do this, count up the number of firers and roll that many dice at once. Work out which have struck the target and then roll to wound to make things To make things clearer, it helps to roll different colored dice for different variables. If the shooting models have different shoot values, have obstructions in the way, or require a different score to wound, you can designate a particular color for each variable. For instance, blue dice need 3s or more to hit, red dice needs 5s or more to hit. So this pretty much covers it as best as you can really cover it, okay? Essentially, when expert players kind of roll dice and they're just rolling to shoot, they first measure who has in the way rolls and who does not. All right, now let's pretend right now for all of the firers, they all don't have any in the way rolls. They can hit a frontline rank person of the enemy, all right? So they all have the same roll to hit, so you just roll them all together. It doesn't really matter at this point unless they have might for you to separate the dice, because to rolling to hit, you can be firing this way. It doesn't matter what your target is. Your roll to hit is exactly the same. So you just kind of all roll that together. Then if your roll to wound is the same, then once again, you can roll them together. But how do you know who dies? All right, so that's kind of the tough part, right? You're like, all right, I just rolled them all. The real courtesy about this is, if you're not really choosing your targets, then your opponent chooses who dies, all right? Now, he has to choose it amongst legal targets. Let's say your opponent has Morannon orcs in the front, and he has regular orcs in the back. Well, naturally, he won't want his Morannons to die, and you roll a couple 6s. Well, he can't remove those back orcs. The reason why is because they would have needed an in the way. So he has to remove the front rank. And this is assumed as such. Now, you can also say that you're going to kill all models from left to right and prioritize the Morannon orcs first. So by doing that, that allows you to say, all right, when you roll a wound, say you make 3 kills, your opponent is forced to remove 3 Morannon orcs, assuming they're all legal targets with no in the ways. All right, and remember, it has to be legal targets for all firers. All right, so if you have something in the way of the shots for some of your firers and not for others, it's really encouraged you roll them separately, or you say, all right, well, actually, you know what, just roll them separately. That's probably the best way to go. So as long as they all have the same line of sight, the same targets, same roll to hit, same roll to wound, you are golden. Just roll them all together. Then you can separate the dice according to in the ways and stuff like that. Maybe these 5 have in the ways, these 5 don't, and exactly as the rulebook describes. Now, there is a way you can decide to kill the back rank. Let's say you want the back rank to die. Let's say that lowly Miranda Orc is in the, the Miranda Orc's in the back rank, and I'm the Mortal Orc in the front rank. So, you're firing at me, but you want to kill these guys. And you make 2 rolls to wound. And say there's like ranks of us right next to me, right? Well, when you roll 2 rolls to wound, you could say, all right, well, what you're going to do is kill the front rank first, then kill the back rank. Now, as long as it's the same roll to wound. So in the example I just described, this may not be the case. But if you have the same roll to wound for the front rank as you do the back rank, then you can easily just roll both the dice and your opponent must pick them up in that order. I die, then the guy behind me dies. He dies, then the guy behind him dies. And that is actually how that would pretty much work. So this is something, once again, kind of comes to a logic of it. You're forced to really play the game and understand the game, know it, in order to really master how that actually works. But now, the fight phase is another one where you might have some weird scenarios happen. You say you have a monster in combat, and you have a Morannon Orc in combat. These are your models, all right? Now, you want to hurl the Warrior of Gondor you just defeated in combat. But your Morannon Orc can't hurl. He wants to strike that model. How does that work? Well, let's turn to page 39 of our rulebook, and here we have a clause that talks about multiple attacks. And actually, just to make sure, yes, this is it. Actually, hold on, guys. We're going to actually turn a couple pages more. Sorry, 43 of our rulebook. It says multiple attacks. If the winner of a multiple combat has more than one attack, he may choose to resolve each strike one at a time, even against different enemy models. It is allowed, and often a good idea, to see the result of one strike before rolling for the next. Regardless of how a model directs his attacks, you must always resolve all of one model's strikes before rolling to the next model. Once again, Lord of the Rings is a game that happens one at a time. So, you can either choose to hurl the model, in which case you can't strike him, or you can choose to strike the model, and if he dies, you can't hurl him. So, this is up to you on how you want to strike and how you want to hurl and use brutal power attacks. Remember that brutal power attacks are simply a strike. That's all it is, just replacing the normal strike that you get. So let's say you want to barge and hurl. If you have one model that barges it, well, you're no longer in combat, so you can't hurl it anymore. So even multiple strikes like that with monsters, it works out perfectly fine in almost any situation. Otherwise, you'll see the player just rolling all the dice together and saying blue dice need 5s and red dice need 6s. And that's really simply it. You'll see also this happening in the move phase. All right, in the move phase, and this is kind of the most simple one to kind of understand, is every model does move one at a time. You have to resolve one model's movement before you move another, but you'll see a lot of players just sort of moving an entire rank forward, and that's really because they already kind of know how far it can go. You kind of logically can see how they would have moved if he had done it one at a time. Moving things in Lord of the Rings one at a time, shooting one at a time, and resolving combats one at a time makes the game take forever. This is why it is encouraged that you should absolutely roll as many dice as you possibly can within reason and logic, blah, blah, blah. So just keep that in mind, guys. Let me know if I explained that well for you. If I did not, just let me know in the comment section below, and I will go ahead and reevaluate like how I explain this. Maybe use like some actual models to kind of represent what I'm talking about. But for now, that is this episode's Light in the Dark. Let me know if you have any more questions that you want me to cover at length, and I will go ahead and do so.